Hey writers, my name is Sarah Gentry. I'm an author accelerator certified book coach, and today I wanted to share with you how you can create a strong story premise for your novel. So every compelling novel has three key components: the core, the concept, and the character. We are going to dig into each of these components a little bit more. So let's talk about the core. The core is what is at the heart of the story. It's the core message that you're sharing with the reader. What does the book say about the world, or at least your understanding of it? And what is the key takeaway for the reader? All of these questions are approaching the core from different angles and perspectives, but they're really getting to the same heart of the matter here. The core is the heart of the story. The concept is the thing that's going to hook the reader. It's the clever setup. It's the thing that separates the story from other stories that might seem like it. Sometimes you might be looking at a clever setup. Sometimes you might express it as a what if scenario. For instance, what if aliens invaded the Earth? Sometimes these are little sparks of ideas from which your story can grow. A clever concept might be the thing to get you started. And then, of course, we have our character. Whose story is this? Sometimes you might have multiple characters, but usually at the heart of a novel, we have one main character around whom the story is told. We need to know what they want, how they need to grow internally, and what's at stake if they don't get what they want or they fail to grow and become who they are supposed to be over the course of this story. And whether or not the character is going to achieve their goals or not, or how they handle that internal arc, often impacts whether we are telling a story with a happy ending or perhaps a tragedy. But there does need to be some form of change in the character from the beginning to the end of the book for most forms of fiction. So how do all of these three things work together? Well, they should all play together very nicely. That's why at the beginning I showed them as a triangle. They really do form the shape of the story. So the core should be reflecting the character's arc. The message that the story is sharing should be reflecting how the character is growing and changing over the course of the book. The concept should highlight the core in some way. You don't want to just pick some random concept for which the core has no meaning. And the character has to fit within the concept that you've created. It would make no sense to have some character that doesn't fit within this scenario that you've created to tell the story. So here are some examples of stories that have particularly strong aspects of one of these elements. Every novel is going to have all three elements as part of their story premise, but some novels do have a stronger weight in one of these three things, and these are all great books. So for instance, if we're looking at novels with a strong core message, The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas is exploring this idea of what it means to have justice and equal opportunity. And Lovely War by Julie Berry is a beautiful exploration of what it means, this contrast between love and war, and about love ultimately conquering all. Red, White, and Whole by Rajani LaRocca is also just a lovely, beautiful story of a young girl with Indian heritage who is herself living in the United States and an American citizen. And so this book explores themes of what it means to have this feeling of split personalities and always feeling like maybe she doesn't belong in one of these groups or the other, but about being her whole self and embracing all the different pieces that are a part of her. And then we look at novels with a strong concept. So something like Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Certainly this idea that humans are interacting in this virtual reality multiverse of sorts is a very high concept The Bodyguard by Catherine Center is a story about a female bodyguard who is taking care of a famous male movie star. And The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett is a story of two twins who are both Black, but one of them pursues life as a white woman because she is very fair-skinned, whereas the other twin chooses to remain with her Black community. And that book explores what it means to embrace different identity, but as you can tell, it's a very strong hook. So usually books with a very strong concept can often translate well also into other forms of media because of how strong the hook is. As soon as I tell you what the hook is, you kind of have a clear sense of what that story entails, and you can kind of see it unfolding before your eyes as if on the screen. And then novels with a strong character. Of course, every book should have a strong character, but I've chosen some particular ones here that just really have a very strong voice and perhaps quirks and personality traits that really set them apart. So when we look at Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, not only do we have the strong main characters, but also the band itself kind of acts as this one main character as well. And it's also a very strong character unit. So that's why I selected to highlight that one here. Millicent Min Girl Genius by Lisa Yee is just a very voicey middle grade protagonist who is also incredibly smart and is trying to navigate her way around what it means to be around other kids her age who might not be as academically gifted as she is. And then The Field Guide to the North American Teenager by Ben Philippe has a young Black Canadian hockey player who gets transplanted to Southern Texas, and it's quite a culture shock, as you can imagine. And he's also a very distinct kind of voice teenager, and it really makes for strong reading. So now, once you have figured out what your core concept and character are, you also need to make sure that they're interacting well with one another and that they're piecing together the way that they should. And once you've established all three of these pieces, now these three pieces are making up your story premise. And once you have the story premise, well, then you start making craft choices about how you're going to tell the story. This is when you are deciding things like what type of point of view you're going to use and what kind of tone you're going to write in and all of those sorts of things. Sometimes even, the genre can be part of your craft choice. You might have a story premise that could work at various different age levels, but once you choose whether it's going to be YA or middle grade, that certainly impacts how the story is told. You can also use these core concept and character parts of the premise to establish the tentpole scenes of your novel. And this is how you can ensure that the novel will be complex and compelling because it is tying to the main important pieces of your story, but it's also giving your story depth and cohesion. So I just wanted to talk a bit about the story premise because this is the type of work that I often do with novel writers, because really making sure that you have a strong premise from the beginning is very important. A lot of people get stalled in their novels simply because there's a part of their premise that isn't working well. And so it's amazing what you can do at the very beginning with just a few key elements to really save yourself a lot of time and trouble later on in the process. So there are three ways that I typically work with novel writers. One is through my year-long program called Novel Resolution, and that is a coaching program that is a year-long group program, and it only opens in January of every calendar year. So if you happen to be watching this in January, you might see if enrollment is open. If you're looking at this video at a time when Novel Resolution is not open, you can put yourself on the wait list so that you're informed when it will open again the following January. There's small group coaching intensives that I do. Those are 4-week workshops that are limited to just 3 to 5 writers at a time. And these usually have a particular focus But often this story premise is an intensive that I do offer more frequently than perhaps some of the other things. And then, of course, there's private coaching where I always work with the writer individually and meet them where they're at, whether they are developing a story idea or editing a story that they have already written. So I want to thank you. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you go to my website, solutionsforwriters.com, and look in the freebies section, there is an accompanying PDF guide to go along with creating this strong story premise. It's a 12-page guide and it is free for novelists. And I invite you to grab a copy. All right, thank you. I hope that this will help your writing and let me know how it goes for you. Thanks.